Okay, thank you. Welcome to the next episode of Manomet Small Sit, featuring Arne Lesterhuis, Senior Shorebird Conservation Scientist here at Manomet Conservation Sciences. And if you're new to Manomet Conservation Sciences, a little background on our organization. We use science and collaboration to reverse shorebird decline, promote coastal resilience, and educate and inspire the next generation of conservationists along the Western Hemisphere. And if you're a friend, volunteer, trustee, counselor, or donor to Manomet already, then thank you. It's only with your support that we can continue to get our boots muddy, doing hands-on science in collaboration with local partners. And just a couple of housekeeping notes for today's webinar. First, we would love attendees to type into the chat where you're all zooming in from. Then after that, we're going to reserve the chat for any tech issues. And we welcome your curiosity, so please type any questions you have into the Q&A box, and Arne will be happy to answer them at the end of the presentation as time allows. Let's see, and a little background on Arne, who's Dutch by origin and was born and raised in the Netherlands. He studied wildlife management at the Van Hal-Larenstein University of Applied Sciences in Holland and has been working as a professional in the field of bird conservation since 2000. He's worked for WIRA Paraguay, Wetlands International, and BirdLife America's Secretariat. Most of his work has been focused on migratory birds, and he comes to us today to talk about some recent shorebird work in the Guianas. Okay, Arne, take it away. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jeannie. Let me share my screen to start with. Oh, yes, okay. And then, can you please confirm that you see this?
Yes, looks good, Arne.
Okay, great. Thanks. Yeah, thanks again, Jeannie, for this introduction. Welcome everybody for tuning in. And well, as Jeannie just mentioned, we're always looking forward to be able to muddy our boots. And actually that is very possible in the Guianas, along the Guianas Green Coast. So let me show you a little bit more about what we're doing there. Get to the next slide, if that works. There you go. Yes. So the Guiana's Green Coast is are the three countries, Guyana, Suriname, and French Guiana, where we are working now for a couple of years. We call them green countries, not just because the coast is very green, but in general, these three countries have a very large forest cover still, and most of them, over 9%, is still forest. They have all three different languages. Guyana speaks English, and in Suriname it's Dutch, and in French Guiana it's French. So that's of course challenging on its own already. But the countries are very diverse otherwise as well, very different cultures. So a very interesting place to work in. But we are there, of course, for the shorebirds. And shorebirds are quite abundant in the area. That's what piqued our interest in the area, of course. And the information that there is already from, well, some couple of decades ago, actually, from the 70s, when there are some pioneer studies that were published from Suriname, where Arie Spaans did some research along the coast of Suriname to look at the importance of the coast for shorebirds. And this is just a graph from one of the publications showing that semi-palmated sandpipers, for example, are very common in several sites. But these are still quite low numbers if you know what can actually occur there. And so another study in the 80s, which was the Atlas of Nearctic Shorebirds on the coast of South America. It's a great publication that actually showed even better how important the coast of the Guianas is for shorebirds, and we could even consider it as one of the most important sites in or along the coast of South America. And what they did in this study was actually an overflight along the entire coast of South America, and that's why these numbers came out. Where in this case, this map here are just the small shorebirds, so the peeps, sandpipers, and other small shorebirds. And these were observed in huge numbers just on the coast of Suriname, Guyana, and French Guiana, but also several other species like yellowlegs or dowitchers and black-bellied plovers were also very, very commonly recorded just in that section of the coast of Northern and South America. So of course, the importance of the area for shorebird triggered the designation of several wisdom sites, all in Suriname. So already in the 80s, in the late 80s, one of the first sites that joined the network in South America were actually Biggie Pan, Copenhagen, Monding, and Via Via, all sites of hemispheric importance, and really expanding the network, the wisdom network, into South America after its foundation in 85, 86. All sites, as I mentioned, all these sites are of hemispheric importance, but of course there are more sites. There are other potential sites out there along the coast of French Guiana, Guyana as well, and also some other sites in Suriname, which in theory could be wisdom sites as well. And we're actually currently working with local partners in Guyana and French Guiana to try and try to get more sites designated as wisdom sites. So what is it that triggers the abundance? Why are there so many shorebirds along this piece of coast of South America? Well, it's mainly, and probably not only, but the extensive mangroves are very helpful to get abundance of shorebirds. They provide a lot of shelter. They provide good roosting sites. So you have these extreme extensive mangrove sites that go all the way from Guyana to French Guiana. I think most probably are found in Suriname in the middle section of this region. And then also right behind the coast, you have a lot of salt marshes, swamps, lagoons, which also attract shorebirds, but which also are used a lot in some sections for rice cultivation, for example, or shrimp ponds. So still, I mean, it affects to some extent, of course, the habitat, but also these areas, these artificial wetlands are used as well by shorebirds. But I will talk a little bit more about that later. Last but not least, of course, the vast mud flats that you can see along the coast of the three countries is what really attracts these shorebirds, of course. I mean, they are filled with food for these birds, and yes, you definitely can get your boots muddy there. It's really thick mud. It's not easy to walk in. You really have to wait for a sandbar or sandbank to be able to get closer to the coast to walk actually on the sort of muddy areas. Otherwise, you will really get in until you're up to your knees. But I mean, this is perfect habitat for shorebirds to forage on. So, but who's foraging on it? What species do you find in along the coast of the Guianas? More or less, in the three countries combined, there are about 35 to 40 species. The more regular ones are about 22 species of Nearctic migrants that you can find in the three countries. There's not a lot of difference, mainly the same species, of course. Also, there are countries that there are resident shorebird species, of course, southern lapwings, colored plovers, some snipes in the interiors as well. But it's really the Nearctic migrants that are most abundant and have most diversity that you can find them. Just a few examples here on the screen, like the least sandpiper in the top left, and then semi-palmated plover down bottom left, in the middle, yellowlegs, lesser yellowlegs, and a semi-palmated sandpiper, and the stilt sandpiper on the right. Stilt sandpiper is actually an interesting bird because it's quite a numerous its population, but it's more or less disappears in South America. There's not a lot of sites where you can find big concentrations of this bird, but they every now and then find big concentrations in the rice fields of Guyana, for example, also in the salt ponds or rice fields of French Guiana. So apparently it's an important area also for those stilt sandpipers migrating into the interior. Here are a couple of other species as well. well, some of the same, lesser yellowlegs and semi-palmated sandpiper and semi-palmated plover I already mentioned, common along the coast in these three countries. But also short-billed dowitcher, very common, have been seen in small flocks or roosting in bigger flocks in the mangroves. Red knot in the middle, bottom in the middle. Red knot is more or less a common bird, but not really on the mudflats. It's a species that you'll find in flocks of 500 or more on the areas that are more sandy, so sandbars or sandbanks or sandy beaches, which you can find more to the east in Suriname and more to the west of French Guiana. So that's where you can find those birds more. And ruddy turnstone, of course, is very, very common, but dispersed along the entire coast. And often you can see it alongside the fishermen and trying to look for some bits and pieces that they throw away. So they can be quite accessible in those areas where they don't show any they're not scared of the people there. But maybe one of the more charismatic species and well known actually in the region that people that we work with, their local partners and local communities actually know is the whimbrel, for example. And the whimbrel is a bird that's quite easy to recognize. It's a big one. And well, there's a lot of work going on of tracking these birds by Manomet staff and Brad, Shiloh, Alan, Sam. They're doing a lot of work on tracking these birds, which provides a lot of information on where they go, what sites they use, how they use the sites, and it helps connect these sites along the Atlantic flyway. And that works very well with a species like the whimbrel, which is very, what I said, charismatic. So it's an easy bird to sell also locally in the three Guianas. And it provides the tracking data that it provides gives us information on where exactly they go and how they use sites. And for example, Shiloh shared this map of three tracked whimbrels from I think last year that were using a lot a shrimp pond, a specific shrimp pond on the coast of Guyana, which I went there as well, and you can see an image of that shrimp pond. We don't know a lot about why they use it, whether they use it just for foraging or whether they use it to roost, but it apparently is an interesting area for them. And what I do know is that when shorebirds are still hunted in Guyana, and I will talk a little bit more about it later as well. But talking with the owners of this particular patch, they say that there is a lot of control there, and it's not allowed to hunt in that area. So maybe the birds act on that. They know that it's a quiet place, and maybe that's why they like to stay there. But still, a lot of stuff that we need to learn from the use of these sites. And that's important to understand more about shorebirds and how they use the Guianas, because many species are currently in decline at the global level. Shorebirds in particular are really showing significant declines. A study recently published in 2023 by Smith et al. Also Manomet staff joined in that publication. Analyzed 40 years of data of the International Shorebird Survey, and specifically data from the Atlantic flyway, and it showed that more than 20 species were really showing significant declines over the past 40 decades. So it really is important to look up what are the most important sites for these birds and see how we can protect such sites. The publication led to a reclassification of several species and upgrading them in terms of conservation concern. So about 12 species, and maybe some more of those that occur in the Guianas are actually of conservation concern. 6 are vulnerable, 6 are near threatened, and these are species like black-bellied plover and lesser yellowlegs and short-billed dowitcher, which really are really common species in the Guianas. So the Guianas, the Green Coast there really has a sort of a responsibility. But of course, there are threats also there. But before really getting into the threats, I must say that the declines that we have been seeing for many of the species are not really caused yet along the coast of the Guianas. The Guianas is really pristine in that sense. There's still a lot of habitat, and there's still a lot of places for roosting, for shelter, for so. But it doesn't mean that it will always stay that way. And probably one of the biggest unknowns, maybe in terms of how that will impact the populations, is the oil and gas production that you have currently going on in Guyana and Suriname as well. Guyana is one of the fastest growing economies at the moment due to the gas and oil production. But of course, this comes with risks. There can be oil spills in the future. Hasn't happened yet, but there can be oil spills in the future, and there is no real emergency plan for that yet, like how to respond to that. It also includes more infrastructure along the coast, harbors. Suriname is trying to get there as well, trying to also exploit more the oil that they have in front of their coast. Which will also mean plans for new harbors and new infrastructure. So that will, of course, affect to some extent the coastal areas and the habitats of the shorebirds. Waste, there's a big issue with garbage, with waste, that the regulation of and picking up of waste isn't really well regulated. So you have beaches with a lot of plastics. You have microplastic, of course, affecting birds and people probably alike. Agriculture is also a threat to some extent. I mean, I mentioned before, rice fields are quite common in a common practice in Suriname, but also in Front Guyana and to some extent in Guyana. They provide habitat, of course, they provide habitat for shorebirds, but they can also be an ecological trap there, depending on if pesticides are used, for example. And another threat that actually came recently to our attention was also the mining sector. There's a lot of gold mining, and that's although it is in the interior, they use a lot of chemicals, and that is a runoff of these chemicals into the coastal plains, into the mudflats. So there might be pretty harmful chemicals at some point in these mudflats as well, which can have an impact and result in mangrove die-off and even die-off of populations, bird populations. And then this awful picture in the middle is hunting. Shorebird hunting is still a very common practice in some regions of Guyana. It's legal to do so. In Suriname, it's not legal anymore, so their shorebirds are protected, but there's also still hunting going on, and some studies have shown that there are quite so it has some impact. I mean, there are probably tens of thousands of birds caught every year, which is quite a lot and has its impact on the population, especially if a population is already in decline. So yeah, migration of these birds is not free of danger, and there are a lot of challenges on the way. And well, if you go back to the coast, leaving aside for now the threats, if we go back to the coast of the Guianas, it's a very, very dynamic coastline. It changes all the time. It's like there's sort of a cycle of about 30 years where mudflats move eastward, mudflats, sandbanks, and it's all sediments that come floating from the Amazon basin. So there is the Guyana current, they call it. It's a current that goes that flows from the Amazon basin all the way along the coast of the three Guianas. And maybe you remember, I think a couple of weeks or months ago, I think we had a small sit which was given by Juliana on our work in the Amazon basin or along the Amazon river systems. And to some extent, there is a slight connection. I mean, the shorebirds that are standing on the sediments of along the coast of the Guianas are actually standing on sediment that comes all the way from the Amazon river system as well. So that's an interesting connection, of course, that how that's all linked. But of course, this also means that regional planning is important if you want to conserve that area. I mean, a mudflat that you want to protect today might not be there in 2-3 years' time. It has moved, so you need to look at the regional level at this area. So in terms of conservation action, what have we doing so far? We started working in the Guianas a couple of years ago. We focused first locally. We focused on Suriname mainly. Despite that, Wizard is present or Wizard sites are present in the region for over 30 years. We didn't really start working on the ground as of a couple of years ago, starting locally and then slowly on looking more regionally as well. And we have a variety of things we have been doing. We've been working on capacity building of local partners and local communities. We supported habitat management. A lot of monitoring. We've been doing monitoring mainly in Suriname, but also starting it up in Guyana and in French Guiana, hopefully soon as well. Training the next generation is also very important. Working with university to get more experience and more professionals on the ground from the region to work on and be interested in shorebirds. Community engagement, of course, is also very important. Get people involved with the work that we do and show them why it's so important at an international level. And finally, we're currently very busy and working on the development of a regional conservation plan. Just some examples, capacity building workshops. We've done a couple of those in Suriname where we have reached 50 participants, for example. We had one of those from 12 institutions. In these workshops, what we do is that we build capacity in shorebird identification, monitoring of shorebirds, monitoring techniques, community engagement activities. How can you reach out to people to involve them in the actions? But also habitat management. So very, very diverse topics to get people interested in the material. All focused, of course, on shorebirds to give those birds more of a platform. One of the reasons also we started working in Suriname and specifically in the management in the wisdom sites there is that many of these sites are protected areas, and there's especially protected or multiple use management areas, which means that they can be used also for resources. They can have resources to a certain level. And although there were management plans for these areas, they never really got to implement them. So that was also why we were there to help and support the implementation of these plans. And a part of that was to help in the installment of a management commission for example, Big Ipanmuma, one of the protected areas. And there were already plans to get such commissions installed because they can help with identifying priorities and also inform the authorities, the Ministry of Land Policy and Forest Management, who is in charge of these areas. And so we supported then the installment of these commissions and helped with building capacity of the members of this group. In terms of habitat management, what we supported here was reducing the outflow of water from Big Ipanmuma. There is illegal shrimp harvesting in the area, and the way they do it is like they ensure that that there is a strong current to catch shrimp during low tide. But it also means that they open up parts in the coast so that there is more outflow. But whenever you open up the coastline, the ocean will also start moving more in, and it will slowly open up the area. So instead of making sure that the outflow is is naturally and not too much, it increases over time, which results in lower water levels in the wetlands behind the coastline, which then affects the opportunities to fish and affects income. But it also it affects the way you can get into the area, which then impacts the tourists that like to go to the area. And there are a lot of lodges, eco lodges on the biggest lagoon within Biggie Pond, and that's where people cannot come then if the water is too low. And you can see that on this image, for example. This is Biggie Pond, so this is like with a part of the big Wisden site. The Wisden site is like 60,000 hectares, so it's very big. This is like a big lagoon just behind the coastline, and you can see the lodges over there. But a couple of years ago, due to the increased outflow, some of these lodges came on dry land, and then you cannot get to these places, and tourists cannot come there to stay and enjoy the habitat. Monitoring, we also do a lot of monitoring. We monitored a lot along the coast of Suriname for in the known Wisden site, but also looking for potential new key sites. Brahmspunt, which is which is a site close to the capital city. Paramaribo is a very important turtle nesting beach, but also a very important roost site apparently for shorebirds. There's over 20,000 semi-palmated sandpipers observed there during a service in October. So that's a potential new Wisden sites, and these surveys during the migration period are very important just to understand how birds migrate through, which birds stay, which birds move on, because Suriname and also Guyana, French Guiana, are very important stopover sites during migration, and then also very important for birds that actually winter along the coast. So similar kind of monitoring activities we have also supported in Guyana, and also hope soon to support some of that work in French Guiana as well. Very important, as I mentioned before, is generating of training the next generation. We've been working with the Anton de Kom University in Suriname, providing seminars to a lot of students already, also taking students into the field to teach them in situ about shorebird identification and counting techniques. And we have, through this work, we have been supporting students also to obtain their degree. We had supporting their thesis work, and also have supported exchange, taking students to work in Guyana, for example, and also to the office of Manomet to really build this experience and build on their shown interest on doing shorebird work. And we will continue with that. We did also seminars now in Guyana, for example, and I hope in the future also to do this in French Guiana, just to get more on the ground expertise. And then last but not least, engaging young and old. I mean, it's very important to engage people. Of course, the local communities are aware of shorebirds. They know, for example, the whimbrel often, more often than not. But what sometimes is missing is the international context of the importance. I mean, showing them that the birds that they see commonly, which are almost 10 months per year on their coast, that actually 2 or 3 months per year they fly very far away to breed and then come back. So it's very interesting to share that message with young and old through the organization of migratory bird festivals. And we've done that now for 3 years in Nikiri, which is one of the districts of Suriname. It's the district where Biggie Pond is, one of the Wisden sites. And so far we have been reaching more than 400 school children and parents, which is very successful. But last but not least, of course, all this work also showed that we need regional conservation planning. We need to work at the regional level. And so since last year, we started working on developing a conservation roadmap for shorebirds using the green coast during migration and wintering. this is a work in progress. And there are several actions that we've been implementing since last year. It's mapping key actors in the 3 countries, carrying out gap analysis of past and current conservation action to understand what has been done, what has been working, and how can we support what works, and how can we align our work with already existing work. Compilation of all information available, species, habitats, sites, threats, and capacities, working with a lot of people on these kind of topics. Some of it we do through participatory workshops. So currently we're in the midst of several of such workshops, also using the conservation standards approach. Open standards, just to get all the information that we need in terms of threats and what are the drivers of the threats, etc., to understand how we could make a difference and how to develop, how to design the strategies. And ultimately, we hope to get to the stage that we have regional endorsement of the planning process and the actual plan. So just in a nutshell, some of the activities, stakeholder assessments and gap analysis that we have been carried out. We have done workshops in Guyana, a lot of stakeholders present, also in Suriname, and we hope soon also to get more information from French Guiana, where we are working with a local partner, to get more information on what has been done there already. And there is also still planned field work to do to gather information on gaps, what we don't know yet. And then, ultimately, what we hope to get to, of course, is to get a Green Coast Shorebird Conservation Plan for the 3 countries, which, of course, is then built in collaboration with a lot of partners and communities to be. So that it's a document that is well, how you say it, endorsed by a wide public. I mean, of course, we don't do this alone. Manomet is not doing this alone. A lot of people are helping out at this stage and are still involved. Ever since the start, we were very closely with Marie, which is from the University of Suriname, and her students are very involved with the work that we're doing. Within Manomet, I get a lot of help with the community parts of the work with VNA, and we have a regional coordinator now helping out also, which is Katja, who is originally from Belgium, but I think she has lived more outside of Belgium and has been working in the region for over 30 years now. She's very well known in the area and also speaks French, which is very important for us because we do not speak that well French. So that's very convenient. And then there are a couple of other people that have been helping so far very well with specific tasks like organization of workshop, for example. Or gathering information or implementing activities. So there's a lot of people. We don't have them all here. There are many more, of course, that are helping out, but they just wanted to highlight some of them that have been very instrumental so far already. And we look forward to continue working with them. And then last but not least, of course, the work is supported by a whole bunch of foundations and donors, which we are very grateful for, of course, and to hope to continue receiving their support in the future to come. So thank you very much for listening. I hope it was clear. I somehow stayed within the time limits, and if there are any questions, then I'm here to hopefully answer them.
Thanks, Arnie. That was great. It's inspiring to see all that work and nice progress happening on the Green Coast. You know what? I'm going to kick it off with a question, and I don't know if this is a dumb question or not, but you said hunting in the Guianas, not Suriname anymore, but hunting shorebirds is still legal. Are they hunting shorebirds for meat?
Yes. So that is a very long tradition apparently. It's very cultural. It's just to hunt for meat. Yeah, they eat the shorebirds. So Yeah, there's not a lot of meat on a
Yeah, they don't
but at the
seem that
same
big.
time, but that means that you need a lot, and that's
Oh.
where the problem that's where the problem is.
Yeah, I would think so. But I had another question too, which is, since you show that you're working with a number of partners, do we at Manomet identify partners and then kind of go reach out to them to be partners, or do they come to us? Is it kind of a mix and match? How does that work?
It's generally us reaching out. That's generally how it starts. It's a lot of the work that we do in South American generals, yeah, so that we get on the ground and see who's doing what, and then see if like hey, what partner potentially could be interested or has the skills to help out to deliver what we are after. So
Hmm.
often, for example, organizations like the Green Heritage Fund in Suriname, which is led by Monique Paul, who was in the slide as well, they never really work with shorebirds, but they do coastal work. They work with mangroves. They work with they survey dolphins, for example. So they are involved with coastal related activities, and then it's just a small step to also look at like shorebird, for example, also look at habitat of shorebirds and how to conserve it.
Nice. I do have there's a question from Valerie who asked about is the support from Fish and Wildlife being threatened? I'm assuming because of the political landscape, and we're going to be careful how we answer that question. I mean, I imagine things
We
are.
are now
Go ahead.
we are currently still, I mean, the work we still do receives the support from that. We don't know what the future will bring, of
Hmm.
course. We hopefully it will continue, but so far it's nothing has changed just yet. And the work that we have been doing, a lot of the work is finalizing, and we now continue more to head to other. Uh, well, we focus a little bit more now on the regional planning, which
Hmm.
uh,
Yeah.
comes from a different source.
Okay, so that's good news still. I wanted to ask, you mentioned the engaging young and old people um, on the Green Coast. I've seen some photos about with workshops with kids. What do they do hands-on stuff? What happens at those workshops with schools?
Well, the festivals they generally have a lot of activities, which can be just very average, yeah, activities, and so there are some booths, and then there are little games for
Hmm.
kids to play,
Hmm.
and there's information provided. So often there are some videos that other partners that also showcase their work that they show. But actually, the last one in October last year, the students that were, well, I showed them on the picture as well. Students of Marie, Tiffany, Shaira, Timothy. They actually developed a couple of very fun games actually,
Hmm.
like bingo, and there was like a board game, and they actually have designed and made that from scratch, and
Hmm. Fun.
then people had the kids take turns, and that was really cool. Yeah, to see
Nice.
that kind of things going on.
Because science can be fun.
It, it is fun,
It
yeah.
is fun. I have a question from Sarah who says, are there challenges particular to working across the Guianas? For example, 3 countries, 3 languages, and how do you handle that?
The French is challenging, but that's just for me then. So that's where I'm very happy with that Katja is on board and helping us out, specifically because in that region. But other than that, no, I don't. I think it's very interesting and actually to work in these 3 countries, which they are all a bit the same size, but they are very different. They're very interesting cultures, but people are very easy to work with. So it's no, there are no real challenges to that, other than any other challenge in any other country.
Hmm. Here's a question from Valerie. Is there banding being done, and is that how the counts are done? How do the surveys work, and is banding happening yet there?
No, there's no currently no banding going on. There has been done banding in the past by David Mizrahi of what was it, New Jersey Audubon, I think. Um, so that in the past there has been done that kind of work, but nowadays we observe and we count. So we implement the International Shorebird Survey at specific sites. Hopefully in the future there'll be some banding going on, but not currently.
Okay. Let's see. And that, oh, wait, one more question here from our chair, Dan. How is Manomet WISRIN? And WISRIN, just so people don't know, is Western Hemisphere Shorebird Reserve Network, for which Manomet hosts the executive office. How is Manomet and WISRIN engaging with the government and corporations to understand impacts from oil and gas operations?
Active conversations, yeah, we are talking with them. I mean, part of the projects are in collaboration with the ministries, and in Suriname there is still a lot unknowns of where it will go. But in Guyana, at least, we have close conversations with the government, and we are involved, and we hope to learn like what are the plans for the near future in terms of infrastructure and all that, and planning on any emergencies when they happen. So it's I mean, at this stage, we are conversing with them, and the relationships that we build are good, and it's easy to access these channels.
Okay, I've got time for one more question, which is, Priscilla says, I see a Modus poster there. How is that working? Are they picking up many birds? Is that happening down there?
No, yeah, well, there used to be 3 Modus towers in Suriname, but they're currently not working. And they were set up, I think, by David Mizrahi at the time, but they're currently not active due to vandalism and weather and other problems. So that's challenging to put towers up.
I mean, challenging to buy the towers, challenging to install them, and then challenging to maintain them.
Maintain them,
Yeah.
yes, yes. If somebody finds a battery powered Modus tower, they tend to take it, and that can happen anywhere. So that's
okay.
yeah. So yeah, that's challenging, but I mean it's something that that probably in the future will continue. They will probably put on some antennas there at some point.
Okay.
I think there are plans for Guyana as well, as far as I know. So there are no antennas yet of Modus, but there are plans to put some up.
Awesome. Well, that's all the time we have for questions. Thank you so much, Arne, for sharing that work. And for those who might not know, we at Manomet recently kicked off a new campaign to bring some visibility to our shorebird work. It's called No Boundaries, the Magic and Wonder of Shorebirds. I'm actually going to put the link to it in the chat so people have access to that if you're interested. Actually, if I find it, I can add that. Here we go. Thank you. And it highlights 9 of our flagship shorebird species. So if you want to learn more, please visit that link. And if you enjoyed today, we'd love for you to support our work directly with a donation online if you haven't already. Also, if you want more Manomet, please join the conversation on our socials or visit our events page online. We have upcoming some bird walks, a nature journaling workshop, and a virtual trivia night. And the next small sit is going to be on June 25th, featuring our fisheries team on the topic of green crabs. And for trustees and counselors, we look forward to seeing you at our annual meeting upcoming next week. And that is going to wrap up another edition of the Small Sit. Thanks for joining us all. Thank you so much, Arne, for your time and talent and knowledge. Thank you. And we at Manomet Conservation Sciences are signing off and wish you a great day. Take care, everyone.